I ignored my feet for 15 years. Not because I didn't notice, I noticed. The coldness that wouldn't go away even in summer, the slow crawl of tingling that started at the toes and moved up to the arch some nights. The way my right foot specifically felt like it was wrapped in something. Not pain, just distance. Like the signal had to travel further than it used to. I noticed all of it. And every time I noticed, I made the same decision. I decided it was age. I am 83 years old. I have made that decision, it's just age, more times than I can count. About my knees, about my sleep, about my energy in the afternoon. And sometimes it's true. Some things are just age. But what was happening in my feet was not just age. And the 15 years I spent deciding it was cost me something I can't fully recover. What I can do is tell you exactly what I found when I finally stopped ignoring it, and what changed when I did. Because here's what nobody told me for 15 years. The feeling in your feet is not a foot problem. It's a vascular problem. And underneath the vascular problem is a chemistry problem that has a name, a mechanism, and, this is the part that took me too long to find, a response. The name is something researchers have been studying for over 2 decades. When blood sugar runs elevated, not dangerously elevated, not emergency room elevated, but chronically elevated in the range that millions of older adults are told is manageable, glucose molecules begin attaching themselves to proteins throughout the body. The compounds this process creates accumulate over time in the walls of your smallest blood vessels, the ones no one thinks about, the ones feeding the nerves in your feet. Those vessels stiffen, they narrow. The nerves they supply begin to receive less oxygen, less nutrition, less of everything blood carries. And the signal those nerves send when they start to starve is exactly what I had been feeling for 15 years and calling age. It wasn't age. It was a report. Your feet are the first place you feel this because they are the furthest from your heart. The blood has to travel the longest distance through the smallest channels. When those channels are compromised, your feet know before anywhere else does. I want to pause here because I need to say something about the medical system, not against it, about it. My doctor is good. She has managed my blood sugar for 11 years. She checks my A1C, adjusts my medication when the numbers move, monitors my kidneys, monitors my eyes. She is doing what the system trained her to do and what the appointment structure allows her to do. What she has never had time to do is sit across from me and explain that the tingling I mentioned, twice in 11 years, was the surface signal of a microvascular process that I could be actively influencing with what I ate, when I moved, and what I put in my body first thing in the morning. That conversation takes 30 minutes. A standard appointment gives her 8. I don't fault her. I fault the gap. And what I'm doing right now is trying to fill it. Drop your fasting blood sugar number in the comments. Just the number. I read every one. And if you've ever mentioned foot symptoms to your doctor and felt like it wasn't fully addressed, drop the word feet alongside your number. I want to understand where people are, now. Here is what I stopped ignoring, and more importantly, here is what I did about it. The first thing I understood was the morning window. After 7 or 8 hours of sleep, your body is dehydrated in a way that doesn't feel like thirst. Research has specifically documented that adults over 60 lose the reliable sensation of thirst even when cellular hydration is significantly below optimal. That quiet dehydration concentrates glucose in the bloodstream. And concentrated glucose in the fasting state is when the chemistry that damages small vessel walls is most active. Which means the first thing you do in the morning, before coffee, before food, before anything, matters more for your feet than almost any other decision you make all day. I started drinking 16 ounces of warm water before anything else. Into it I put the juice of half a lemon and a half teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon, the true variety, not the common cassia found in most grocery stores. Lighter color, milder smell, meaningfully different chemistry. Research has specifically studied the compounds in Ceylon cinnamon for their effect on insulin receptor sensitivity in peripheral tissue. The lemon adds flavonoids, specific plant compounds, that studies have associated with protective effects on capillary walls in people with elevated blood sugar. This drink costs less than $1 a day. It takes 90 seconds to make, and it works not by lowering blood sugar directly, but by changing the chemical environment of your bloodstream during the window when that environment is most consequential for the vessels in your feet. The second thing I understood was what the first meal does. For years, I ate breakfast in whatever order felt natural. Toast, then eggs, fruit, then oatmeal. Carbohydrate arrived first because carbohydrate was easy and fast, and I wasn't thinking about sequence. Research has established that the order in which food enters your stomach determines the hormonal response to that meal. When protein, eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, is the first thing your gut processes, your body releases specific hormones that slow how quickly glucose from everything else you eat enters your bloodstream. Same meal, same total carbohydrates, different order. The glucose curve that follows is fundamentally flatter. A flatter glucose curve means less glycation chemistry in the hours after breakfast. Less glycation chemistry means less ongoing damage to the microvasculature feeding your feet. I eat protein first now, every morning, without exception. It is not complicated. It is just a sequence. The third thing I understood changed how I thought about the hours between dinner and sleep. I had been ending every evening the same way for decades. Dinner, then the chair. Television, a book, sometimes just quiet. An hour, maybe two, before bed. I thought of it as rest. I thought I had earned it. What I didn't understand was what my blood sugar was doing in that chair. Dinner raises glucose in everyone. In a body where insulin response has slowed, as it does after 60 in almost everyone, medicated or not, that post-dinner glucose stays elevated longer. And the longer it stays elevated, the more time it has to interact with the protein in small vessel walls throughout your body, including in your feet. Research comparing different timing and structures of physical movement found that 10 minutes of walking immediately after dinner reduced the overnight glucose area more effectively than longer workouts at other times of day. The mechanism is a glucose transporter in muscle tissue that activates with movement independently of insulin. It doesn't need your pancreas. It doesn't care about your insulin resistance. It simply pulls glucose from the bloodstream when muscles are in use. 10 minutes, around the house, around the block, slow is fine. The mechanism activates at the start of movement, not at the start of exertion. I walk after dinner now, every night that I am able. In the mornings after the nights I walk, my fasting number is consistently different from the mornings after the nights I don't. The fourth thing I understood was the overnight process itself. Between roughly 2 and 4 in the morning, your body begins preparing to wake. A hormone, cortisol, starts rising. As it rises, it signals your liver to release stored glucose to fuel the coming day. This is normal. This happens in everyone. But in people with disrupted sleep, waking at 2, lying awake, falling back, the cortisol release is larger than it should be and earlier. The liver responds. Glucose enters the bloodstream in the middle of the night. By the time you wake up and test, that glucose has been sitting in your vessels for hours. Research has documented that even a single night of fragmented sleep increases insulin resistance measurably the following day. Not chronic sleep deprivation. One night. I started going to bed at the same time every night. Same time. Not a range, a time. And I lowered the temperature in my bedroom to 66 degrees. Research on sleep architecture has established that core body temperature must drop to enter the deep, slow-wave stages where the most metabolic restoration happens. A warm room prevents that drop, a programmable thermostat, a consistent bedtime. These are not medical interventions. They are decisions that change what your blood sugar does while you're unconscious. Now, those 4 things, the morning drink, protein first, the 10-minute walk, the sleep structure, formed the system that addressed what I could see and measure. But underneath all of it is the tissue itself, the nerve fibers, the capillary walls, the cellular environment inside those smallest vessels where the damage has been accumulating. For that level, the cellular level, where glycation damage actually occurs and where nerve fibers either receive enough support to function or slowly don't, the research points to specific compounds that work directly in that environment. Not blood sugar medications, not general supplements. Compounds studied specifically for their effect on oxidative stress in peripheral nerve tissue. The research on this is decades old and more rigorous than most people realize. Clinical trials, peer-reviewed journals, consistent findings. The morning drink addresses the window. The food sequence addresses the curve. The walk addresses the overnight exposure. And the cellular support addresses what's already been stressed. That's the system. 4 behavioral layers and 1 nutritional layer underneath them all. Stopping if your feet burn at night, or go numb, or feel cold, no matter how many socks you wear, please don't ignore it. I almost did, and I'm 80 years old. For years I told myself it was just age, the tingling, the heaviness in my legs climbing the stairs. But it wasn't age. It was my blood sugar quietly damaging the nerves and the circulation in my legs, and almost nobody warned me in time. If you let it keep going, those little signals turn into something you can't undo. I wasn't willing to lose my feet or my independence. So I started doing one thing every single day to help support healthy blood sugar and protect my legs. I'll show you exactly what in this video. And if you want the simple support I personally use, there's a free presentation linked in the description below. The ignore was the first move. But stopping doesn't rebuild. It changes the direction. What builds is what comes after. Here's what I mean by that. The 3 habits I described, protein first at breakfast, 10 minutes of walking after dinner, consistent sleep in a cool room, they don't work as a list. They work as a system. Each one addresses a different window of the same 24 hours, and the order matters because each one sets up the next. The protein breakfast works on the morning window. When protein is the first thing your gut processes, eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, whatever form, your body releases a hormone that slows how quickly everything else you eat enters your bloodstream. Research has documented this clearly. Same meal, same carbohydrates, protein eaten first, and the glucose curve that follows is meaningfully flatter. For nerve tissue that has spent years inside a high glucose environment, a flatter morning curve is not a minor improvement. It is a protected window that compounds over weeks and months. The 10-minute walk after dinner works on the evening window. Movement activates a glucose transporter in muscle tissue that clears sugar from the bloodstream without requiring insulin. Research comparing post-meal movement to longer workouts at other times found that 10 minutes after dinner reduced overnight glucose exposure more than a longer morning session. The walk doesn't need to be fast. It needs to happen within 30 minutes of finishing dinner, before the glucose from that meal has peaked in your bloodstream. The sleep structure works on the overnight window, the one that had been running unsupervised for 15 years. A consistent bedtime stabilizes the circadian rhythm that governs when and how much cortisol rises before dawn. A room kept at 66 degrees allows your body to enter the deep sleep stages where insulin sensitivity is partially restored and cortisol behaves predictably. Research on sleep architecture has established this connection clearly. A warm room and a variable bedtime are not minor preferences. They are inputs to the hormonal system that runs your blood sugar while you sleep. Morning, evening, night. 3 windows, 3 habits, 1 continuous system. I want to tell you about a man, 77 years old from Georgia, 19 years managing type 2. He'd accepted the numbness in his feet the way you accept weather. His doctor had called it advanced neuropathy. He started the 3 habits, wrote me at 6 weeks. He said the numbness was the same, but something else had changed. The mornings were more consistent. He knew what he was going to feel when he stood up. The unpredictability had quieted. He said, I didn't realize how much energy I was spending preparing for the bad mornings. At 12 weeks, he wrote again. The consistency had held. And on 2 mornings that week, he had felt the texture of his bathroom floor through his left foot in a way he hadn't in years. I'm not his doctor. I don't know his full picture. What I can tell you is that the mechanism is real. The windows are real. And what he changed was the environment those nerve fibers were living in every single night. Underneath the 3 habits, at the cellular level, where years of overnight glucose exposure leave oxidative stress inside peripheral nerve tissue, there's a 4th layer that completes the system. Nutritional compounds studied specifically for their effect on that oxidative stress in peripheral nerve fibers. The research spans decades, multiple independent clinical trials with consistent findings, documented mechanisms on exactly the tissue producing the symptoms you've been feeling, not a trend. Peer-reviewed work with a long and consistent record. The protein controls the morning, the walk controls the evening, the sleep controls the night. The cellular support works on what the night's already touched. If you made it this far, you already understand more about your own legs than most people your age ever will. That matters. You know now that the burning, the numbness, the cold feet, they trace back to one thing: blood sugar slowly working against your nerves and circulation. And you know the goal isn't a miracle. It's protecting your ability to stand, to walk, to stay independent. That's why, alongside everything I showed you today, I use a simple daily support to help keep my blood sugar in a healthy range, so my legs keep carrying me where I want to go. I put the free presentation in the description below. Go watch it. And as always, keep working with your doctor. This supports your routine. It doesn't replace it. If you're on medication for blood sugar, I'm not asking you to change that. My doctor knows every habit I've built. She has watched my numbers across the months. She adjusted nothing, because nothing I do conflicts with treatment. It supports it. Track your fasting number every morning for 30 days. Write it down. Bring that data to your next appointment. Let your doctor see 30 consecutive mornings of your own numbers. That conversation is different from one built on a quarterly lab draw. Drop the word 15 in the comments if something in here reached you, and drop your fasting number. I want to know where you're starting, so you can look back in 6 months and see how far you came from here.